Do you have a side hustle and want to know how to turn that into your full-time money-making business? Stay tuned. We're going to have a great conversation about just that. Hi, I'm Steve Brady, Executive Director at the Covation Center. And once again, I have an honor and a privilege to interview someone who has a small business. This time I'm sitting here with Kirsten of Kirsten Hartzell Photography. Thank you for taking the time to talk with us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's awesome.
Now, I want all of us to know a little bit about, just quickly, what is the journey you took? What's your business about? What do you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I officially launched my business in 2016. And at that time, I had no idea that I was going to end up here, of all things, or that I would actually continue into going full-time in photography. Originally, it was just kind of a little side hustle that I had during college. And then I took a gap in between after I graduated, got married, moved to Pennsylvania. And then actually in the middle of like COVID, the lockdown and everything, I'm working full time remotely. And I'm like, you know what? I have this business, like I have this talent. If I had the time, which now I have it, I could do something with it. And so I put in the time. Like as soon as I clocked out of work, I clocked into my business. And a year later, well, 2-ish years later, here we are.
Oh, that's awesome. And I will tell everybody, the way I know about her is simply because she is killing it on Instagram and killing it in social media. And I've enjoyed watching your business grow and the way you reach out and share about your business and share with other photographers the things that you think are tips for them. I'm going to ask you for a few other tips. You said you went from a side hustle to having a business.
Yep.
What are some of the things that you would tell anybody who has any side hustle, what they need to be looking for, things they need to be worrying about overcoming, and things that they can do to succeed as they make that shift?
Yeah, absolutely. So I know it's kind of a big jump and everything, but when I decided to go full-time into my business, I had to give up some things. So I kind of gave up the luxury of just chilling and watching Netflix, which it sounds silly, but I mean, when you're stuck at home, and there's nothing else you're gonna do, it's very easy to slide into those habits. And so as soon as I took that off the table, the amount of spare time I had to only work on business stuff was amazing. So that is just prioritizing what you can to essentially get things done that are important to you.
And so starting your business was important to taking it from side hustle to full-time was important for you.
Yes, and so freeing up as much time as I could to focus on that was one of the best things that I did. And that was literally the first thing to go, and that was, it just made a huge difference. It was night and day. The other thing that's super important, especially in my line of work, is you can't compare yourself to other people. You have to continue working, defining your voice, finding what your artistic style is. And you can really only compare to yourself, because if you're constantly playing the comparisons game to other artists, and they're all very talented, they're amazing, but you can get really down on yourself, and that is really discouraging, especially to younger photographers and stuff. So that was a huge thing, was not playing the comparisons game. And I think honestly, the third thing is just putting yourself out there. It's uncomfortable, but it's worthwhile. And honestly, I started doing that with Instagram, and I noticed a huge pickup just in how people were interacting with my business online, how people were interacting with me. They felt that I was more approachable. I started getting more business as a result, and that kind of trickled down into other social media platforms, and as well as how I continue to present myself in person to my actual clients.
Now, one of the things that we talk about at the Covation Center a lot is understanding the value that you're bringing to your clients. And there's a difference between the value you take from what you do and the value that they get from what you do. How do you bridge that with your clients, with your subjects of your photographs?
Yeah, just in how I bring them value.
Yes.
Yes, so honestly, a lot of what I do is I try to over-communicate. So I try to, one, tell them exactly what to expect, whether we're shooting, whether I'm delivering their gallery, whether it's our first time working together, whether it's our 10th time working together. I go through the same process of being this is how I work, this is what you can expect during the session, this is what you'll expect afterwards. And if you have any questions, concerns, you can reach out to me these ways. So one is just gauging their expectations, and two is I try to also over-inform and over-educate if I can. And that's something as simple as creating specialized guides for whatever kind of session that I'm working with, and essentially outlining different things that we'll touch on during our time together. So that's helped a lot.
Now, I don't remember if we talked about this or not. I know we talked a little bit about your educational background, but did you have a business degree?
No. So I went to school and I have a bachelor's of science in communications and a concentration in like photography and visual design.
So how did you make the transition from being a creative to being a creative that runs a business? I mean, what did you do to figure out the pricing? What did you do to understand the value that you can take from them in exchange for the value that you're giving to the client?
Now that's the big questions, because
that's why I saved it for the middle.
Yes, and that's honestly fantastic. Those are honestly things that I'm always challenging myself to reevaluate. And honestly, each year in my business, at about the 6-month marker, I kind of sit down and I evaluate my goals. And so it's like, am I charging enough for what I'm doing? Is my client getting a satisfactory product? Am I delivering like something that like they can expect this quality of work every time? Should I be like doing something different? So I'll sit down and I'll ask myself these questions. I also try to kind of touch base with my actual like clientele and just people who like follow me online and stuff, just to see like, is there anything I can do better for you? What would you like to see? And I kind of reevaluate. But a big part when I was kind of diving into all of it was honestly just continuing to educate myself beyond what I learned in college, and specifically to like niche down in my business. So that's like investing in mentorships and stuff with other photographers.
It's funny, I was about to ask you, have you found yourself getting a mentor or seeking out mentors in both business and photography?
I have had a couple, specifically for like my photography business and everything. And it honestly was night and day, because when I first started, I didn't know that I should look into something like that. And I feel like my business kind of showed that. But the more that I have invested into my business, it's just like played out so much better. So yeah, I have looked into it for both, and it's taken me a long way.
Well, that's awesome. Now, could you just tell us a little bit about some of the, I'm trying to figure out the right way to phrase this, some of the most interesting challenges you faced? I mean,
as a business owner?
As a business owner and as a photographer, what are some of the like I say, interesting challenges that you faced?
Interesting. Well, I actually wasn't supposed to live in Pennsylvania, so that was interesting.
Okay.
So after I got married, me and my husband just ended up having a better opportunity in Pennsylvania as opposed to New York. Now, it's not too much of a difference technically in location. They're just a couple hours apart from where we would have been living, but launching into a new area, it took me a long time to build up my business, specifically in Pennsylvania. For the longest time, when I did kind of revamp and everything, I was actually going to New York almost maybe 2 or 3 times a month to shoot, which I unintentionally expanded my business to this greater, like I say I shoot all over the East Coast, but essentially I unintentionally expanded my business through like Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, all of these surrounding states. And it was all because I had to like revamp, rebrand as soon as we ended up like getting dropped here. So that was interesting.
It is. And when you talk about moving all over the place and covering the East Coast, it brings up another question for me. Sometimes businesses will choose to grow very, very quickly and hope that the revenue catches up and will invest time and money into that. Sometimes they'll move very, very slowly. Where would you say you are on that continuum in terms of time and money investment for growing your business?
Right. So I honestly felt it was kind of a combination. I feel like the first year, as I was kind of revamping, reworking, just building from ground zero, because I had that gap, I felt like it was moving very, very slowly. And then within the last like year, it's honestly just like picked up. I'm getting all of these crazy opportunities from like the back end work that I've been putting in behind the scenes that nobody else sees. And suddenly just things are starting to happen. And it's almost like, okay, should I start to hire someone else to work with me like at this point, just because like business is starting to pick up in a way that I wasn't like almost anticipating, but like it was ultimately the goal I was always working towards, if that makes sense.
It does, and that's actually a great point for anybody who has a side hustle. One of the things we tend to do is do all the work ourselves, and we don't take into account all the work we have to do for a product. Now, I can understand, you're about to tell me, I suspect, how much work is really involved in post-processing.
Yeah.
Even if you have those Adobe Photoshop, what do we call them, presets, you still have a lot of work on each individual photograph.
It's not a one-click solution.
No.
Never is.
So what do you tell someone with a startup that they're making something, handcrafting or whatever? What warnings or advice would you give them as they look to grow that business?
Yeah, well, honestly, it's kind of knowing where your talents lie, knowing like what your heart is really in, and making sure you're prioritizing your time and your work so you can really like appeal to that, because that's going to really speak volumes to your audience. And then the other thing is just time management. It's just really taking the time to be like, okay, what's the most effective process for me? How can I maximize my time and make sure that I'm still getting enjoyment out of this, especially if it is a side hustle and you're not sure if you want to go full time. It's finding a way to balance it all is like one of the biggest things.
Now, have you found time for Netflix again?
Here and there. Now, me and my husband do like to be a little bit lazy because he has like a full-time job where he doesn't make his own hours like I do. So essentially I'll make the time to spend that with him afterwards, and I kind of rearrange my work schedule for whether I'm traveling, whether I'm like shooting really heavy one week, whether I need to edit more. But yeah, I do. Every now and then. It's nice to relax.
Well, then I have one really final question. I think this is probably the most important question. You're 5 years in. By the way, congratulations. That's very successful to be around 5 years in. Half of all small businesses fail in the first 5 years. You're 5 years in. Was it worth it?
Absolutely. It was not the journey I anticipated, but it has been a wild ride, but I've been like here for every step of the way. And I would never, I mentioned this earlier, I would never have dreamed to be doing what I'm doing today when I first started this little business in college. But I am ever so thankful for all of the amazing people that I've worked with along the way, for all the lessons I've learned from like my clients, other photographers, from just like trial and error. Like I have grown so much more as a business owner and even as an individual just from this whole 5-year process.
I want to thank you for taking the time with me today. I do appreciate you making time in that busy schedule that you talked about. This is where I remind you, please click subscribe. Don't forget to click the like button. We really like that. And hey, hit that bell so that you'll know next time we have another great interview like this one. Maybe put it up on our Covation Center channel. Thanks for joining us, and thank you for the time.
Thank you.